Hello.
Hi, and welcome to the first in our ongoing series of 3 webinars. So to quickly introduce ourselves before we jump into things, I'm Mike, growth hacker at CDNify. So I'm responsible for applying audience growth thinking to product and business design, as well as devising the strategies for our product launches. And I'm joined by James, who's the founder of CDNify.
Hi, hope everyone is having a great day. We really got some exciting stuff to talk about today, and really this webinar is in terms of how CDN can greatly benefit you from a marketing perspective. So we're shying away from technical things, and we're really going into how a CDN can actually be used to kind of increase your conversion rate and boost profit for a business.
Yeah. So the title of today's webinar is The Need for Speed, the Importance of Accelerating Your Content. So if you have any questions during the presentation, then if you tweet them to @CDNify and use the hashtag webinar, then what we'll do is we'll run through them all at the end, or if there's any that are particularly relevant to what we're currently talking about, we'll just introduce them as we're going along.
Okay. So
this webinar, we're going to look at various aspects, which I've kind of broken down roughly into 4 areas. So firstly, we'll look at why speed matters and run through a case study based on a project that I've previously worked on. Then what we'll do is we'll look at what you can do to beat your competition and why it is that you need a scaling strategy in place. We'll then run through some quick, easy optimization techniques and tools that you can pick up and kind of get started with straight away. And we'll sort of cap all of this off with a kind of getting an understanding of how all of this kind of stuff affects your brand, people's awareness of your brand. So, particularly how the speed of your content affects people's perception of your brand. So, to kick things off, let's talk about why speed matters. So, I'd like to analyze this in the context of a project that I previously worked on, like I said, which, whilst it wasn't a great experience at the time it was happening, in hindsight, it taught me an awful lot. So prior to working with James, I worked in advertising, kind of amongst other things. One of the kind of most exciting projects I got to work on was with Channel 4 and a production company called Windmill on a show called Foxes Live. So the show itself is sort of pitched as an innovative way of integrating user interaction and second screen activity in order to drive narrative of the actual program that's being broadcast. So the site, which is the element that we were responsible for, helped to uncover the secret life of the urban fox. So we kind of achieved this through running an online survey to gain a better understanding and insight into what people really think of the urban fox. Are they a pest? Are they not a pest? That kind of stuff. And then in addition to that, we also mapped the movements of the foxes using GPS collars. So then the viewers could go onto the website and track the foxes in real time.
So this was quite a big deal, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of their most successful multi-platform projects, I think. And for those of you who don't know, Channel 4 is one of the UK's largest broadcasters, possibly the largest, actually.
Yeah, it's obviously one of the mainstream channels, so it's nationwide coverage across the UK.
Yeah.
And the viewing figures for this particular programme were pretty high, weren't they?
Yeah, so it attracted 1.5 million people, and that's second only to a Big Brother eviction. So so it was their second highest ratings for a show. So it's quite a big deal, really. And in some ways, that was part of the problem that we encountered. So during the show, the presenters told the viewers to head over to their website so they could track the foxes that were being released live on the show. And the site itself just couldn't stand up to the amount of hits it was actually receiving.
And as you can see in front of you, we've got a sort of screenshot of what this looked like. We obviously have a Google map there, and the statistics were shown on this. This was quite an interactive experience and really good marketing as well for the channel and for the program.
Yeah, I mean, it was something new. I think it's there's a lot of talk of kind of multi-platform projects, and I think obviously that's very important. But I think this was one of the first times that really the multi-platform elements directly informed what was happening live on the show. So that was quite a big deal, and it was also, to be honest, in hindsight, it was part of the problem that we faced. So the presenters told everyone to head over there, and the site basically fell down, and it was a bit of a big mistake, really. It harmed the relationship with the client, which kind of obviously it's going to. Now that's the kind of thing that you can sort out quite easily, but it's also kind of crisis management that doesn't necessarily need to even be done in the first place.
Exactly.
I think so. One of the issues I think is that we were commissioned by Channel 4 and Windmill as the web experts, and we were definitely. If you're looking to create a really cool, amazing, interactive, real-time, multi-platform project that totally engages your audience, then you really are in good hands. But what we weren't was infrastructure experts, and I think those two things are quite different. You can be an expert in building great user experiences, but then understanding the underlying infrastructure behind that is a separate skill in itself.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I've worked in advertising on all sorts of different projects, and, I approach things from a marketing perspective generally, and my concerns are slightly different to, say, a performance expert's concerns. So whenever we kind of approach a campaign or a project, I always have 6 questions which I ask myself. And they are, who is the audience? Where are they hanging out? What's the best content to reach them with? What will they react to? What will they expect to see when they get to the site itself? What's the process or the best thing to show them in order to convert them into a lead? I just say thanks to Kieran, our marketing assistant, for that lovely slick bit of animation that you just saw then. So now I think actually I'll just go back a page. So I think that second to last question for me is a really interesting one. Like I said, my focus has always been very much on the front end. It's about finding customers and driving them to something. So as long as I'm doing that, I'm essentially doing my job successfully. However, in all my years working on websites and multi-platform projects, I very, very rarely have thought about infrastructure and the things that sit behind this.
Yep. And this is becoming increasingly common, isn't it? Because as the internet has grown and become a lot more social over the past few years, the shift has really gone from traditional SEO, where you're just trying to optimize a site for specific keywords and get traffic via the search engines, to something that actually can potentially go viral very, very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly.
And in the case of this Fox's Live example, it obviously did, because not only did you have the people who were actually watching the program, which is a vast audience in itself, and a very clear direct call to action there, but also all of this social activity with friends tweeting about it or putting it up on their Facebook feed, so you get all that additional traffic going towards your marketing campaign, which perhaps you didn't anticipate, or a few years ago wouldn't have exactly happened, and it wouldn't have been as quick either. No,
absolutely, and it's about that spread happens so fast, and definitely, I mean, you're thinking to yourself, like, what do you expect a user to see when they land on your site? You don't expect them to see your website down.
Exactly.
At any point.
That's right.
That's just the worst thing that can happen. So, ultimately, speed matters, because, if you get caught out, then all your hard work's really kind of going to go to waste.
Exactly.
All those 12-hour days that you put in up to launch, all that effort trying to identify audience segments that we do kind of on a day in, day out basis, working out ways to create interest amongst people, it goes down the pan, because if ultimately the aim is to get as many people to a place at a specific time.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. So I've basically got a 7th question that I always ask myself now, and it's basically kind of, what is the scaling strategy?
Yeah. So this is important, and this 7th question has now kind of come as a result, just so I understand, of this kind of fatal error where you had something that really kind of aggravated a very important client.
Yeah.
And probably damaged your relationship. I don't know, but I mean, was it to the extent where you then didn't potentially, there might have been future work with this client, and then perhaps they didn't give it to you, or
it was resolved? I mean, all those issues were resolved, but obviously they were there, and they didn't need to be there. I think that is the point, you know.
So yeah, I mean, perhaps there's no scaling strategy in place, and therefore, you know, future business may have not come as easily as if you did have one in place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is it. Like those 6 questions, I always think about them, but I think now more than ever, it is definitely vital to think about the scalability of it as well. And even though I'm in marketing, it's still, you know, if something falls down, that makes my job harder.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, because that then becomes a marketing issue.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd extend that to everyone that's kind of listening and watching in today. You know, do you know what your scaling strategy is? You know, do you know what systems you have in place if you need to scale quickly? You know, more importantly, do you have anything in place to ensure that everyone who comes to your site always gets the fastest, most enjoyable experience possible every single time that they visit you?
It's an important question. It's important.
Yeah.
It's very important. Okay.
So going back to the Channel 4 situation, I think really if we'd had a CDN in place, or if we'd done any form of real load testing, then we could have just avoided that situation completely.
Yeah. So I mean, just to clarify, in this particular example, from a technical perspective, obviously the site is dynamic in that the content shown to the user is based on stuff that's actually happening, e.g. the foxes and the locations they were, but it wouldn't have to been exactly real time. I mean, the information may have been like an hour out of date or a few minutes out of date.
Yeah, definitely.
So all of that information could have still been cached by the CDN, and all of the content, JavaScript and everything could have been loaded from the CDN. And obviously the benefit of a CDN is that instead of your traffic being driven to a single location, hitting 1 or 2 servers really hard and where they can easily fall over, the very nature of the CDN is that it's redundant, because if one of those servers fell down, it would just be redirected to another location. But because the traffic is spread across a vast network of POPs or servers or whatever you want to call them, the likelihood of one of those locations going down is significantly reduced, because obviously, you know, the traffic is spread, which gives it a faster experience to the user and really eliminates any potential downtime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is it. I mean, we were at an e-commerce convention the other day, and there's a lot of people there selling content marketing strategies. And I think if you're dealing with lots of content, I think you also really need to be understanding how you're delivering that content, not just creating the content, understanding the audiences that you're delivering it to.
Precisely.
It's the whole infrastructure thing. I think it's a vital service that people definitely kind of need to be offering their customers.
Yeah.
I was personally a little shocked that so many people didn't know what a CDN was.
Well, yeah, I mean, we spoke to quite a few of the exhibitors, and you know, one's a technical solutions company.
Yeah,
and they deliver outsourced web development, app development, that kind of thing. And the guy hadn't got a clue what CDN was, and that really surprised me. Yeah, and I think it just goes to show that, you know, the guys who are in the know, the people who are already aware of what a CDN is, you know, e.g. chances are if you're watching this webinar, you probably know what a CDN is, or you may have some interest in it. So obviously you're onto a really good track, because, you know, that allows you to gain a huge competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
Over the guys who claim to be experts, but actually they don't know about something like a CDN. So they're going to be holding themselves back.
Yeah, it's ultimately it's applicable to any kind of web-based service. Like, I'm obviously from a marketing background. I've done a lot of multi-platform stuff, and I've done quite a lot of content marketing type stuff as well. But it's much wider than that. It's an e-commerce platform. It's any type of transactional, you know, action that takes place on the internet. I think
exactly.
You know, definitely. So next, I want to kind of talk about what are the marketing dynamics that are driving the need for CDN, and kind of what are some of the opportunities that present themselves for your brand. Okay. So the market itself is really, I mean, it's defined by milliseconds, isn't it? It's, you know, everything has to be fast, you know, and I think consumers expect that more and more. They expect content quickly, you know, without a doubt. You know, as companies continue to grow, the presence in kind of different markets all around the world, you know, you can sell into lots of different territories now. At that point, definitely optimized web and content performance is just becoming a bigger and bigger priority. So, first of all, kind of industry growth area. So currently, something like 2.8 million websites worldwide using CDN. So of that, roughly 46% includes some of the most visited websites on the net, and North America holds the largest CDN share. So that's estimated at, I think, is it 1.3 billion, and on target, I believe, to reach 4.6 billion in 2017.
Yep.
So there's definitely a growing demand. Partly that's probably going to be down to mobile as well, I would imagine.
It's down to mobile, and it's down to things like, increased social activity.
Yeah.
Just general internet use, which has shot up over the past few years. It's no longer one of those things where, it's just techie people who use the internet. It's just become hugely mainstream, hasn't it?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
Even when you compare it to sort of, say, 5 years ago or 8 years ago, even back then, everyone wasn't on the internet all the time like they are now. People were using their mobile phones, for example, 5 years ago, or say like 8 years ago, back in 2005, 6.
Yeah.
You were using a mobile phone to text people, to ring people, but now people are using their mobile phones to text people, to ring people,
do everything,
and to sit on Facebook and refresh Twitter and visit links and all that sort of stuff. So general internet traffic has shot up just for that reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also there's kind of quite an opportunity around emerging markets as well, I think. So, we currently, what is it, the figures for Russia? Russian IT spending is expected to grow by 11.4% in 2014, and China's currently on target to reach 8.6%.
2013. Everyone knows that China's, in multiple ways, China's kind of a very emerging, growing market. There's all this sort of conspiracy theories about the superpowers, etc. So it's not just about the kind of United States and Europe anymore, but you've got to be aware of the growing markets which are out there.
Yeah, definitely. And so then, next, kind of let's just think about some of the performance metrics. So for me, it kind of goes without saying that slow load speeds can have obviously a very serious negative impact on user experience and sales. So in addition to your site speed, can also have effect on your search engine rankings. If your site's loading slowly, ultimately it's going to lower your visibility online. So what is 73% of, actually these facts are really interesting, I think. 73% of mobile internet users say they've encountered a website that's too slow. Like that's a high number.
Yeah, and I think that can be looked at as two things. If you think about it, a mobile internet, yes, obviously it's getting better with the invention of 4G. And I was reading earlier that Samsung apparently claimed to have patented a 5G technology. So that's exciting. But obviously the majority of users are still on 3G. So 3G is great when it works, but then sometimes if you're in an area where the coverage isn't great, it can be a lot slower. But also, that slowness is increased by the fact that a lot of websites still aren't delivered from a CDN.
Yeah.
So if I'm in Manchester, for example, where we are right now at CDNify HQ, and I'm on my mobile, do I want an image which is half a meg in size to be downloaded from a server in the US? No, obviously on my mobile it's going to be significantly quicker if it's downloaded from our POP, which is actually in Manchester. Mobile content is a great way to sort of notice an increase in speed if you're using a CDN.
Well, definitely. So then, of that 73%, 46% of those users would abandon the page if it didn't load within 10 seconds. We were kind of discussing this earlier, and I was personally quite shocked that number was so high.
Yeah.
When I use the internet, I don't even think I'd wait 3 or 4 seconds. 4 seconds is probably my maximum.
Yeah.
So then that brings us on to that 1 second delay can decrease your customer satisfaction by 16%, but most worryingly, that 1 second delay can lead to a 7% reduction in conversion. So if you're only selling to 100 people, it's not so bad. If you're selling to 1 million people or 1 billion people, that's a big number.
Yeah. And for those of you who are interested in this, Amazon have done some great case studies and some great research in terms of page load speed and how it affects their conversion rate. Some really good stuff out there if you want to go and have a look.
Yeah, because obviously then 64% of those customers who are dissatisfied, they're just going to go elsewhere basically. They're not going to come back to your website. That's it. It's just lost leads, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
So, again, actually, this was kind of one of the interesting case studies. I'll just run through this quickly. A lot of this stuff's online. You can go and Google it and find all these figures and stuff. But Shopzilla saw a conversion increase of 7 to 12% by reducing by reducing the page load speed by about 3.5 seconds, which is it's quite interesting because they also, based on that, they increased page views by 25%, and not only, they also massively reduced their costs in the process, which, you know, I'm sure as a owner of a company, James, from your perspective, that's a very important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, everyone wants to. Not only do you want to please your customers, but obviously, at the end of the day, a business is there to generate revenue and make profit. Yeah. So, the more things you can do to make your life easier, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that goes in terms of whatever website you're running, really. Even if it's not there to make profit, I guess you want your visitors to be happy.
Yeah, I mean that's
down to.
Yeah, completely. I mean that's it. I think that 64% is a pretty scary number, really. I mean, getting stuff right from the bat is really vital for your online presence and for the perception of your brand. So when we were thinking about Nike earlier, you know, as a brand, that's all about pushing the limits of human performance. You know, can you imagine if they didn't have a website that performed itself? I mean, that'd be pretty negative PR, I think.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's the thing. Is like Nike obviously wants people to associate them with speed, for example, or
performance. Yeah, definitely. You know, and that archive that they're projecting, that needs to be present in everything that they're doing, from the performance of their website to the actual products they're selling.
To the swoosh logo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's completely it. So, obviously, you know, a lot of this kind of performance perception, it's about load time, you know, and it can vary across different regions and stuff like that. So, you know, if you're in Europe, you're selling to people in America, chances are your content's probably not getting into the hands of users quick enough, you know. And one of the interesting things actually we were talking about earlier, which is about emerging markets. Then, you know, if you're looking to get into that area, CDN's absolutely vital. So there was a figure that we had, which is typical website hosted in Europe or the US takes 20 to 40 seconds to load in China. That's a lot of yuan to be losing out on, I think, isn't it?
It is a lot of Chinese dollar.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of what we want to do now is just run through some very, very kind of easy entry-level tools and techniques that you can use. I mean, you can kind of go and do these straight away.
Yep, exactly. This is just quick fixes that everyone should be using. I mean, obviously, some of this stuff you may already be aware of, but you may not. So let's just go through this really, really quick, because I'm aware of the time. We're overrunning a little bit. So, and we want to sort of have some time for some questions at the end.
Yeah. So, tools and techniques. So, the first thing, if you've not already installed this, head over to the Google Chrome Web Store and download and install PageSpeed Insights. And you can really simply, what it does is it gives you a list of issues with your website and it gives them in a priority order. So it's, you know, it's really useful and it's really easy to get started with. Next, absolutely don't serve large images on your website. I mean, this something that we really can't stress enough. It just looks really bad from a brand perspective when images are loading slowly, you know. And if you have to search large images, just make sure that they're optimized. It's, you know, there's so many things out there, so many tools and plugins that you can use dependent on what CMS you're using, that you really shouldn't have any excuse for this. So for example, this is one that we like. If you're using WordPress, Smush It's a really great way of minimizing your images. So obviously, if it depends on what CMS you've got, but if you head over to the CDNify blog, there's quite a lot of tools and tips there based on kind of different CMSs, and also I have a whole bunch of this stuff on my computer. So if
ultimately, you know, it will reduce your bandwidth bill. I mean, it's incredible. We've got a long-term client who contacted us. We hadn't heard from him for about 2 years. He contacted us a few months ago and said, "Why is my hosting plan running out of bandwidth? You know, why do I keep getting these bandwidth limit exceeded errors?" We looked at his site. On his homepage, he had an image that was 5 megabytes. So every single time someone visited his site, it was eating through his bandwidth like crazy. And all he had to do was just run that through Smush It or even just save for web in Photoshop. And I think he reduced the image down from like 5 megabytes to just like 0.8 of a meg. Yeah. You know?
That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Okay.
So yeah, and one other little thing would be about JavaScript. And this is just a simple thing to make is don't put your JavaScript in the head part, put it in the body. So put it lower down on the page. It's obviously dependent on the website, but for me, like if you're doing a lot of marketing campaigns and a lot of those campaigns are focused around having parallaxing websites or kind of cool fancy animations, just load the JS further down the page. It'll make it easier. It used to be a case
of like a few years ago, it was recommended you put in your head tags. Now it seems to be pretty much standard that you put it right at the bottom just before the closing body tag.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think if you use a lot of that stuff together, you're going to, along with a CDN, then you're going to begin to see very good results straight away.
Yeah.
So next point, and this one's quite interesting because ultimately social sharing, it's an incredibly important thing to have in your website. You've got to have those little widgets all over your site, but the negative to them is that they massively affect the load time of your site. Now, it is functionality that needs to be there, but I would say you need to be selective about where you're placing it. Like with mailing list sign-up forms, if you just dot them absolutely everywhere, people become blind to them.
Oh, absolutely. So not only will, you'll decrease effectiveness of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Okay, next up, we've got CodeKit.
Yeah, so if you don't have time for a lot of this stuff, there's a really cool little tool that you can use called CodeKit, which is a paid app, and it basically does a lot of what we've just run through for you.
Presumably this is for Mac.
Yes, it is. It's just for Mac users, that's right.
All right, so we're a big fan of Apple here at CDNify.
Yeah.
But, a lot of developers are now using Apple, so this is a great tool.
Yeah, it helps you optimize your site without any prohibitive costs, really, so you can just kind of get on with it. So the next point, kind of what we wanted to move on to, is just looking at what the future might hold for CDN, because it's a relatively young market, but there's loads of ways to innovate within that market, and that's something that we're really passionate about at CDNify. One thing that we think is there's going to be a huge shift towards next generation federated content services.
Yep.
There's a lot of benefits, such as you make massive savings by caching the more popular content, but CDN's a lot more than just being a caching service. If you're an agency, CDN really is a value added service you need to be providing to your customers.
Yes.
And we believe, really that CDN is going to be central to a lot of brand strategies moving forward, especially, as we said, as mobile usage increases and as people kind of get more and more used to snacking on content. So by that, I mean quickly accessing it, short form content, and lots of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, what people want. Definitely. So, ultimately, content producers and providers, they want better content delivery services, but they want that without limitation. And Federated CDN allows you to get access without laying out lots of costs up front.
Yeah, and a good analogy is it's really the difference between shopping in a mall and shopping in a supermarket. So the legacy CDN market, very, very high cost, generally speaking.
There's one choice. So once you're signed up with them, you're just using their service.
CDNify is a federated CDN, and effectively what this means is we leverage the power of available capacity in various clouds around the internet, which has allowed us to grow very, very quickly. We've got over 40 POPs at the moment on a network, and also it means there's a lot of locations, a lot of servers. Rather than being limited to one bandwidth provider, one internet backbone, they're kind of spread.
Yeah.
This is also how we undercut Amazon, actually. I mean, we're pretty much half the price of Amazon on a per gigabyte basis.
Yeah.
And also various, some of the other CDNs which are even significantly more than Amazon on a per gig basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that pretty much summarizes the presentation. Thank you very much for watching and listening.
Yeah.
What we want to do now is
just check the
Twitter.
Twitter.
Go over some questions. So we're just going to have a quick look on Twitter. And the first thing we've got is how much will my site speed up when using a CDN?
Is that right?
Yeah. So I think that's really kind of a subjective question, because
depends on the type of site. It depends on the content that's in it.
We've noticed anywhere, and also it depends on the server you're currently using. For example, if you're running a website on a shared hosting account, then one of the issues with that is there's a lot of other sites running on that server. So sometimes the site's kind of subject to spam, or they get a lot of sort of bad traffic from bots and such, or they're running scripts which are leaking memory and just causing the whole server to sort of slow down.
Yeah.
So immediately then your site is going to be slow.
Time off that.
I mean, generally speaking, if you're in that situation, you want to try and either move onto a dedicated server or move to a different web host. But if you integrate CDN, immediately a lot of your content is no longer being served from that bottleneck. It's being served from the CDN, which will speed it up drastically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how many sites can I use with your service? Is there a limit?
Okay, so you can use as many sites as you like with CDNify. The great thing is once you've signed up for an account, you can actually add multiple resources. So this is ideal for people who run multiple websites or different apps, or even if you're running it, as a freelancer or a consultant or you're an agency and you've got different clients and you want to add CDN into their sites. You've got different URLs for each site, for example. You can create a resource for each site, and you'll only be billed once. So you top up your account and all of the resources pull bandwidth from your central pool, so you don't have to pay a separate fee for each website you want to set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing at the moment. I think we've got the site currently set up. It's on a free trial at the moment, so you can just get started straight away. You can just head over there and start adding resources.
Yep, exactly.
Any others come through?
I
think that's it, isn't it?
I think we've pretty much got it. If anyone else has any questions, I think the final thing is how can they get in touch with us?
You can either get in touch with us on Twitter directly, so at CDNify. You can get in touch with us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Google+, or if it's a marketing related question, if there's something about this that's sort of piqued your interest, then you can always get in touch with me directly, Mike at CDNify.com.
Or just drop us if you've got any general inquiries, hello@CDNify.com.
Yeah.
We've got multiple full-time support guys here who are ready and waiting to take any questions you've got.
Yeah.
Whether it should be to do with the technical sides of a CDN, or as you say, if you've got general questions about how it can improve your site, increase your app performance, or increase your marketing efforts, improve your marketing efforts. We're here to help. So,
and also refer to the blog as well, because there's a lot of good stuff on there. There's a lot of kind of useful information that we just give out to people.
Yeah, and I mean another great thing which we've just actually put out there is we was it last week or the week before last, we gave a talk at Tech Hub in Manchester. Tech Hub's a really great area for technology companies and startups to kind of meet and network and learn, and we put out a talk which doesn't just cover CDNify. We also talk about some server technologies, open source software which we've used in our existing business to really improve performance of our web apps and things, on a kind of drastic basis, really. We've got another product which is away from CDNify, which serves went from nothing to over 100 million hits in a single month, and we kind of panicked, and we had to learn how to scale it very quickly. And effectively, one of the things I talk about in that presentation is how we did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up. Thanks very much for watching. And
we'll see you in at the next webinar.
Yeah, we've got more webinars coming soon. We've also made a recording of this one, so if you missed it or perhaps you turn up late, you can watch it back.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.